In any area where we've made ourselves an exception, that infinite source is saying to us, no, I'm greater than that too. But I have no money. I'm greater than that too. But I have cancer. But I'm greater than that too. See, all of our objections are overruled in that moment. See, and when we come to this realization, this changes everything. And that's the reason for the season that we're celebrating right now. See, because we're celebrating a consciousness that changes everything. A level of consciousness. It's about the birth of a consciousness that eliminates limits, it eliminates time, it eliminates contingencies, it eliminates exceptions. The birth, the coming forth in awareness within us of something that says, you don't have to go through that. See, it says, whatever you've been thinking about in the past, now think about it without a limit. Whatever you've been thinking about in the past, now think about it without a contingency where nothing has to happen first. You think it, you accept it, and so it is. Whatever you've been thinking about, think about it without any of your special circumstances that we've given to ourselves. Think about it without that exception that you've made yourself. Whatever you're thinking about, see it without time. See it now. Here. Done. This changes everything. Dr. Ernest Holmes says, each one puts on the Christ to the degree that he surrenders a limited sense of life to the divine realization of wholeness and unity with good, with spirit, with God. One. That's where he's saying we need to think of it from. I loved Stephanie's song because she said we want to even think about it beyond words. Because our knowing goes beyond words. When we know that we know, as Ernest Holmes tells us, when we know that we know, our knowing goes beyond words. We don't have to have words for that. So this story, this reason for the season, I like to call it, this is a story about the coming forth of a new consciousness. Now, in reading the Bible metaphysically, whenever we come across the word king in the Bible, metaphysically, the king stands for the level of consciousness that was ruling over the land at that particular point in time. Okay, now, since we're reading the Bible as consciousness, and not about so much about people, but about consciousness, so metaphysically, the king would represent the level of consciousness that is ruling our mind at any period of our lives. So at the time of the birth of the Christ, not a person, but a consciousness, Herod was the king. And Herod represents, metaphysically, Herod represents the little ego. See, and as the story goes, Herod hears about the coming of the Christ. And he's not willing to yield to a new king in town. So what does he do? He puts out a hit on him. Now, that's not exactly the way it reads in the Bible, but that's what it is. That's what it boils down to. He puts out a hit on him. And not only did he put out a hit on Jesus, he puts out a hit on all the Jewish children up to age 2 at that point. He wanted to make sure that nothing came through. Now, this may sound like Herod is a pretty not so nice guy. But the thing we want to recognize is that there's a Herod in all of us. See, there's a part of us that is resisting the changes that we're calling forth in our life. There's a part of us that is ready to just obliterate anything new that wants to come through. Okay? So when we recognize that, we begin to see what this story is really about. There's a new king in town. A new consciousness is in town that moves us out of bondage, that moves us out of an idea of getting free to a realization that we are free. See, a consciousness that changes everything. That's what it does. A consciousness that finally realizes that before Abraham was, I am. A consciousness that finally realizes that when you have seen me, you have seen the Father. A consciousness that finally realizes that I and the Father are one. A consciousness that has come that we may have life and that we may have it more abundantly. I know, I'm telling you, it does. You feel it, don't you? That's what I'm talking about. A consciousness that told us to pick up our beds and walk. See, a consciousness that advised us to live like the lilies, that advised us to be not anxious and to let not our hearts be troubled. Wow, this changes everything. This changes everything. A consciousness that makes all things new. See, a level of consciousness that was always here. It was always within us, but it was lying dormant within each of us until we gave it permission to operate through us. Until we let our heart prepare him room. See, but even though we've heard about this Christ consciousness, many of us have never used it. Many of us have never even touched it. Many of us have never gone beyond our intellect.